guys, welcome to Office Blokes React. I'm Office Bloke Dave.
I'm Office Bloke Mike.
Office Bloke Daz.
Collectively, we are the Office Blokes.
Early in the morning.
Yep.
Early in the morning, yeah. Friday morning, first thing.
Not like us.
I know, yeah. I was early today and everything.
I saw your car when I pulled in. I was like, nah, he must have left it here. Must have left his car last night.
That's a fair point. It's a fair point. Yeah, we are the Office Blokes, and we're looking for a new intro for our little channel. So we're thinking of keeping the same music. I think we've
had a poll, haven't we?
Internal poll here.
Yeah,
between the three of us. But
Unless you've done one of your own that we don't know about.
No, I think you.
No, the poll was about when we release videos.
Was it?
Yeah, we talked about it at length yesterday. Anyway,
what was the 60-70% that wanted to keep the same intro then?
No, that was the posting schedule.
Oh, same thing,
6,
isn't
7,
it?
8. That was 6, 7, 8,
exactly
7, 8,
the same
9,
thing,
9, 10,
isn't
11.
it? It's like a poll, isn't it?
Right, we're digressing. Anyway, so we're after a new intro for the channel. We're thinking of keeping the same music. You just do whatever you want, some sort of animation or something cool. We will have a poll, and
yeah, we're going to grease it up.
Yeah, winner gets a prize. Email us officeblokesreact@gmail.com with your submissions, and we look forward to seeing them. We've had some good ones already.
Although don't forget we've still got like the game challenge to go, haven't we? So could maybe use something for that as well.
Yeah. Maybe, someone wants to do one for the gaming channel.
So if there's any music that's been sent already, they can maybe use it for that.
Good shout. Right then, the failed logistics of Russia's invasion of Ukraine.
Yeah, it's gone a bit pear-shaped, hasn't it, for Russia?
Yeah, good.
The resistance of Ukraine and the support of different countries giving them sort of like arms and weaponry and all that kind of stuff has really helped Ukraine defend the country to the best of their ability. But Russia I think Russia thought it was just going to be a walk-in,
Crimea,
clean up,
all over again,
clean up, liberate, and there we go.
All over in a few days.
Install your kind of proxy government that actually belongs to Russia. And, you know, Zelensky out and his government out, and it's
not gone their way.
No. I tell you what, some speeches I've heard from Zelensky that are like, there's no wonder so many people are flying over there and crossing the border and fighting with them. Yeah. Jesus Christ. Yeah, the resolve of those people is unbelievable, isn't it?
I think Russia have very dirty tactics.
Oh yeah, I think
they'll try the standard warfare, then they'll go all out, fucking chemical weapons, all kinds of shit, dirty stuff.
It's World War III if that happens, so that's the crazy thing. So
France have surrendered already.
That was a long time ago, that.
You'd like to think that someone high up would actually have some sort of common sense and go, listen, our economy's in the toilet now. Russia, I'm talking about. You know, we're fucked if we don't do something. And if we use nukes or chemical weapons, it's back to the Dark Ages, and everyone loses. We lose, everyone.
Let's see what they say. And
I know.
A different opinion.
I know, like, some of the things I've heard were quite outdated equipment from the Russians, but also the supply lines. I think they've got a train system in Russia that's like second to none, you know, like a military-run train system that doesn't extend into Ukraine.
Different size tracks.
Is it?
Yeah.
But there's a thing where they can't get instead of the fuel going by train to the front line, it's going in fuel tankers, isn't it? And the Ukrainians are targeting the fuel tankers. Yeah. So that's why so many of the tanks are running out of fuel and just being ditched.
I think there's rations and everything that's going. I guess we'll find out.
Yeah. Well, we'll get into it. The failed logistics of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Let's do it.
It all happened so quickly. On February 24th, 2022, just after 2 a.m. Ukraine time, Vladimir Putin, the autocrat of Russia, announced in a pre-recorded TV address a, quote, special military operation in Ukraine.
Мною принято решение о проведении специальной военной операции.
To the rest of the world, that meant war. Within minutes, the shelling started, the skies lit up, and the Russian invasion of Ukraine had begun. To many Ukrainians, though, this was perceived not as a beginning, but a continuation of the conflict that began some 8 years prior in the spring of 2014. Ever since Russia and the rebels it backed overtook Crimea and swaths of eastern Ukraine, the country has maintained an enlarged and active military presence along Ukraine's borders. In 2017, for example, Russia re-established the famed but disbanded 8th Combined Arms Army here in Novocherkassk. Revived under the pretense that it was a defensive decision, the 8th Combined Army has since grown, adding artillery, missile subunits, and even, some analysts believe, incorporating separatists into its own ranks. This is hardly an isolated development. From Sevastopol on the southern tip of Crimea to Klintsy along Ukraine's northern border, Russian bases, staging points, and general military infrastructure have grown to increasingly surround Ukraine since 2014. This extension of military might was made possible by the physical seizure of the land and, in the eyes of Russian leadership, justified by the threat that Ukraine could retaliate or try to seize back occupied territories. This extension has also, in turn, quite literally paved the path for Russia to amass an extraordinary 75% of their principal combat units within striking distance of Ukraine. On Wednesday, November 3rd, 2021, the Ukrainian Defense Ministry announced that 90,000 Russian troops had encircled the country's borders and occupied territories. The Russian forces that were in the region for supposed exercises simply weren't leaving. Not only were they not going away, but as the next few months would reveal, their numbers were growing.
I remember talking about this. Did we do it on our Patreon only podcast? Was it on a video just before it was proper war? And I remember
we were
saying
talking about with Russia and the USA. We did one about the USA and Russia just before the war,
right,
just as the war started.
But I do remember, like, because it was at the time where all the troops had amassed on the border and they were building hospitals and, there was blood being delivered and all this. And I was like, I remember saying it's posturing. I was like, there's no way they're going to do anything. And then literally like the next day or the day after, they
when you see videos issued by the Russian Ministry of Defense here like this, and you see what the USA release and what Britain releases and what France, Germany, and the main powerhouses, this just looks like amateur. Even the video looks shit.
Yeah.
Did you do the audio? No, but even the video looks like amateur.
Yeah.
And to me, the Russian military, whenever I see it, I always think you look mean and you look tough, but you look like you're not trained. Whereas when you look at, they're all big and meatheads sort of thing, and then you look at like, NATO military, all the countries in NATO sort of thing,
and
they're all proper trained, disciplined.
Well, aren't they using like a lot of conscripts anyway?
Yeah, they are. Yeah,
I think they are, aren't they? So
yeah, they are. I think it seems like what they did was send in a lot of kids that didn't want to be there. And that's why they suffered quite a big defeat at the beginning.
But that also could be propaganda from the West, sort of like saying this is what they've done. I'm not sure that's the case.
There's propaganda on both sides. I don't doubt it.
Always is, without a doubt.
Yeah.
But I think that when I look at videos like this, it just looks amateur to me. Especially when I see videos of the US Ministry of Defense, British Ministry of Defense, and all that, and their videos look proper like this is what we've got. This is our units. This is the equipment we've got. Showcase it.
Did you see that video that Zelensky did and the Ukrainians made? That was like, it was him doing a speech, like a sort of monologue over footage of their military and footage of their people, and the whole speech was like, "You can destroy our buildings, we will rebuild it." And it was like, so fired up by the end of it. I was like, fucking go on.
Just last night, I was watching last night, and he was doing a speech last night saying like, everyone should go out and protest and go out your offices, go out your schools, go out and get out there and sort of like be on our side. But he's also asked for 1% of sort of like certain countries' tanks, weaponry, military, military equipment, all different things. And his resisted and said, Boris has said, yeah, we can do it, but we're too far away. The logistics isn't great. So the ones closer to you can start by giving them 1% of your tanks, 1% of your aircraft, and Poland, people like that.
Yeah.
And he said, no, we can't do that because everyone's going to get involved and it'll be a problem. France.
Really?
Macron.
But
I think Macron is secretly buddied with Putin because I think he's still buying his oil from there, isn't he?
Oh,
I
don't know.
I think France is still buying oil and gas from there. I think he's a little bit of a backdoor. I think he wears two faces.
Like a backdoor socialist sort of thing.
Yeah.
What's the French party? Are they left? Are they quite left leaning or are they right?
I don't know.
Because I know the Polish are right,
in
aren't
France
they?
at all.
Yeah, just eat the cheese and
I
drink.
won't even fly Air France.
Fair enough.
This is a satellite image from outside the western Russian town of Yelnya in September, and this is the exact same spot on November 1st. From an empty field and a dirt road to the staging area for the Russian 41st Combined Army, normally headquartered some 2,000 miles or 3,000 kilometers away, suddenly sat north of 1,200 tanks, howitzers, towed artillery, and support vehicles. And November only marked the beginning. Satellite images and social media posts tracked soldiers and supplies pouring into southwest Russia across December. But what alarmed analysts most was the fact that
was he big or was that door small?
There's a tiny door.
Probably a bit of both.
The whole thing's been smoke and mirrors the whole time. All
See what I mean
Russians
about
are
this?
tiny.
They're not organised. They're not in a row. It's not straight. You wouldn't get that in any other military.
No,
No other Western military would have that. They wouldn't accept
yeah,
it.
you're right. Some higher up would look at that and go, "That's disgraceful.
Yeah.
It's disorganised. You're not in.
That's what I'm saying. It's too bit.
Yeah,
for me.
You're right. We were up on holiday in Yorkshire last year, and we visited Carrick. Went through there quite a lot, and it's got huge barracks there. But they had trucks like that. But like I say, all perfect,
inch perfect,
all perfect. They were all lined up, and it's
it's like an Asda car park.
It was impressive, but
Can't even get out of the doors on them.
I know, like the wife's been parking them. I'll be in trouble now.
Along with the soldiers and supplies, there were medical units, hospital tents, and fuel reserves. The Russians were amassing the infrastructure for war. The likelihood that this was a simulation plummeted. In January, Russian forces rolled into Belarus for joint exercises. Weeks later, it was announced that the soldiers would stay. Established staging areas like Yena further expanded, while new ones popped up, forming an increasingly foreboding arc around Ukraine.
What was this thing about not wanting NATO to be within striking distance? And he's just done the exact same thing around Ukraine, just completely surrounded it.
Well, yeah.
To get rid of the Nazis in Ukraine, that was the justification, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Crackers.
Now, behind the scenes, what made this massive domestic mobilization of troops, weapons, and supplies possible was Russia's vast rail network. This rail network's extent, earning its status as the third largest in the world, is a byproduct of the country's size, sparsity, and the suspect nature of its road network. Meanwhile, the degree of state control, with the government owning some 20 of the country's 21,000 locomotives, is a legacy of the Soviet era. This control and extensiveness combined means that Russia's military is able to rely heavily on the rail network. It was trains that moved the troops, tanks, and trucks to and from Yena, into Kursk, and across the Bryansk and Smolensk oblasts. Digital forensics have shown that it was also trains that moved supplies from eastern Russia all the way to Belarus. And it was largely thanks to these trains, or Russia's reliance on them, that outsiders were able to so precisely document the military buildup as dashcams filmed transiting tanks at rail crossings, videos which then ended up on TikTok and circulated the world over. Trains set the stage. In the first weeks of February, under a curtain of clouds, Yena emptied out. Its troops and supplies tracked south. As these Russian forces pushed ever nearer to the Ukrainian border, tanks appeared in Kursk, just a 140-mile or 220-kilometer drive from Kharkiv, while additional troops and trucks amassed near Gomel, Belarus, 20 miles or 32 kilometers away from the border. Across 3.5 months, 175,000 Russian troops had stacked up all along Ukraine's border, ready to unleash death and destruction in the country they believed they were there to liberate. In the opening hours of Russia's invasion of Ukraine, the invading force worked to cripple Ukraine's military infrastructure. Some of the first volleys of the conflict involved airstrikes on Ukrainian air bases in an effort to help Russia quickly gain air superiority without strong resistance. 11 were destroyed across the first day of hostilities. By noon, focus shifted from anticipatory defense to offense as dozens of Russian helicopters landed troops at Hostomel Airport, mere miles from Kyiv. This was seemingly in an effort to create an air bridge, seizing control of the airport to allow planes to bring in more troops who would push out into Kyiv. An air-based supply line could assure a certain level of logistical support regardless of conditions on the ground between the border and Kyiv. However, also recognizing this, Ukraine tasked its 4th Rapid Reaction Brigade to retake the airport, which it successfully did by 8 p.m. Across the same day, as fighting reached the Chernobyl exclusion zone and troops poured in from every direction, work continued behind the front lines to support the continued invasion. In Brest, Belarus, Russian forces could be seen unloading supplies from rail cars and assembling into a convoy configuration facing south towards the war zone. In Koniki, near Belarus's closest point to Kyiv, satellite imagery captured a road that Russians converted into a helicopter base with an X marking each landing zone. To the east, in Russia itself, a field hospital could be seen ready to treat early casualties, while nearby, another makeshift facility home to artillery and rocket launchers used in the opening hours of the conflict stood ready for more. However, despite all the well-planned war infrastructure constructed around Ukraine, things inside the war zone were seemingly going less to plan. As the sun rose from a bloody night onto the second day of battle, Russian forces set their sights on Kyiv, the country's capital, home to its government and lauded leader Volodymyr.
When did it become Kyiv? Well, not Kiev.
It was always Kiev until this conflict, wasn't it?
Kiev.
What happens to Chicken Kiev now?
It's called Chicken Kiev. Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? Like, everyone's armchair experts on everything. Like, it was kind of Brexit. You know, everyone knew all about the EU all of a sudden.
Yeah.
And then obviously COVID, everyone was an expert. Everyone became a doctor overnight. And now everyone's like in there, you know, all things Ukraine, everyone is an expert. And it's not Kiev.
It was always spelt Kiev though as well, wasn't it? On news bulletins.
I think that's
the Russian, or that's the Ukrainian way of spelling.
Yeah, right, okay.
Yeah, which we've always had. It's like in any other language, you know, they've got different names for countries, haven't they?
When we used to play in football, we used to play Dynamo Kiev.
Exactly.
It was never Dynamo Kiev.
Yeah, football,
was
that's
it?
right. Yeah, Dynamo Kiev.
Yeah.
And it was, I'm sure they used to spell it Kiev as well, didn't they?
Yeah.
But yeah, it's bizarre.
I'm just worried about Chicken Kiev now.
I know.
What happens now?
Yeah, it's
All that rebranding they're going to have to do.
Garlic chicken.
You're not going to be allowed to drink vodka and eat a chicken Kiev at the same time.
No.
They're going to repel each other.
I know.
Zelensky. Under the assumption that Russia's ultimate ambition was to install a puppet government, Kyiv was the grand prize for the invading force. And yet they only made it to the city's suburbs. Still there, they met fierce resistance and made little progress, turning the night that many feared would mark the capital's fall into but a night. As day 2 became 3, photos and videos emerged that started to paint a more cohesive picture. Russian tanks were running out of fuel and left abandoned, strewn across the country. The invading troops were seen looting stores for food, potentially due to a lack of their own. Stories emerged of Russian forces asking Ukrainian civilians for supplies and directions, seemingly unaware of the average person's opinion on them in the country they were attempting to conquer. Across the board, as they approached the urban areas that could only be taken with the most tactful coordination, the Russian military was looking disorganized and disconnected. Just a few disparate forces tasked with going in, guns blazing, to induce a quick and easy surrender. Of course, that is not what came to fruition. The Ukrainian defense included a recognition of what the Russian offense seemingly missed: the importance of logistics. In the famous words of General John J. Pershing, quote, "Infantry wins battles, logistics wins wars." So, Ukraine went for Russia's logistics. On social media platforms adapted to organize the country's guerrilla-style defense, posts circulated.
Literally on TikTok a couple of nights ago, I saw a Ukrainian teaching people how to make their version of Molotov cocktails.
Yeah, I saw that.
And I was watching it and I was like, this is on TikTok. This is on social media.
Wow. Do you know, there's a lot of stuff they're letting go on social media.
Yeah.
As far as Ukrainian defense goes.
Yeah.
I've seen loads of stuff on it. I'm thinking that would normally get blocked.
I was going to say,
guns,
normally
there's a
you'd
lot of
expect
stuff
to, I
that's
suppose,
been
wouldn't you?
I think guns were a bit of a no-no on
Yeah.
TikTok.
So,
I
yeah,
know
a
we're
lot-
new
a lot
to
of stuff-
TikTok,
Yeah, a
aren't
lot
we?
of stuff
But
sort of like being sort of like filtered through and sort of like, because it's Ukraine.
yeah.
But I just think, this. I don't know who's advising the Ukrainian government, whether it's on their own sort of like merit that they're doing all this and targeting logistics, or whether they're getting advice from NATO and NATO forces and high ups in there, sort of saying this is what you need to do and giving them sort of like advice on how to fight a war.
I
think some of their top people are pretty experienced in combat and everything, aren't they?
Possibly,
generals and stuff like that. I think they clearly know what they're doing.
I do
Or
think
should do.
that the satellite imagery provided most likely by the West.
Yeah.
If there is a convoy coming this way now.
Yeah.
Well, it's totally different these days, isn't it? People don't need
You can't get away with
walkie-talkies.
anything.
People can just use their phones, can't they, in every town, every city,
Yeah.
across the whole country
Well-
to, communicate with other people and
Unless the
say where
networks are taken
they've
down.
seen troops and stuff.
The networks have been taken down in a lot of cases, but Elon Musk has
okay.
provided loads of his
That's
Starlink
right. Yeah.
satellites, hasn't
Yeah.
he?
Has he? Right.
Yeah, so
okay.
people literally have access to the internet because of Elon Musk.
Yeah.
And they can share their stories and,
Just looking at Putin when we first started this video was put together really well.
It's
by the way,
amazing,
so I'm
isn't it?
really enjoying
Yeah.
this.
Yeah.
But it's when I look at Putin when he started, he just looks like a fucking madman, doesn't he?
Yeah.
He looks like an absolute psychopath. who's just angry and bitter about whatever it may be. That's the old Soviet Union's broke up and he wants to try and sort of like put it back together.
I think that's
again.
the crux of it, isn't it?
You
I
have
think
the whole rule of over these countries like your Belarus and places like that. Where it's an easy target. Moldova will probably be an easy target next. Then it gets further, then closer to Poland and places like that, which is then you get into NATO and that's NATO territory and that's World War III, like you said.
What has he gained, or what could he gain from taking Ukraine that he hasn't already lost in sanctions and everything else?
Well, if he accesses it, I guess you're getting all the access to the Black Sea and all that sort of like area around there, all the oil and gas that comes in. So it's more gas lines. It'd be easy sort of like to put gas pipes through to different countries. I guess it's just an oil and gas sort of like logistics war.
The problem
there's more to it than that. That's the little
problem
bit
is for him. If he knew then what he knows now, maybe it might have been different. He didn't expect the West to be so unified and to have such draconian sanctions placed.
Switzerland have put sanctions on him, for God's sake. Yeah. Like, when have Switzerland ever done anything?
Yeah, I mean, the sanctions are absolutely huge, aren't they?
Yeah, but there's a lot of like economic backdrop that goes into it. I'm looking at certain stuff that some of the people have been sanctioned in the UK, for example. And we made a big deal of sanctioning 3 people once, and then I found out they've been on the US youth sanction list since 2009.
I'm
like, what's that? Why has he not been on sanction list for me? Because it's economic backdrop. Because they're getting they receive you do a deep dive into the UK government, find out where their money's come from. It's all Russian money.
It's probably best not to do a deep dive.
I mean, everyone knows the amount of property they've built up in London.
Big time.
Millions, if not billions, of pounds worth.
And even look at when you talk about corruption like this, and it's all financial. And everyone's just sort of like everyone's treading very lightly on what they say and how they go about it, especially with Russia, especially with Putin. Putin knows what he's got a hold on loads of people. It's even the same as when you look at the FIFA World Cup in Qatar. You go down London, it's Qatar registration plates on every flash car that drives past you. The houses have got Qatar flags flying from them. I'm like, I wonder how they got the FIFA World Cup.
Exactly.
What amazes me is in Qatar, and I know we're digressing a little bit, but it's illegal to be gay.
Yeah.
And they prosecute and persecute gay people.
Probably by death.
I'm not sure what it is exactly, but severe punishments. How can one of the biggest competitions in the world be held? Rainbow laces on their boots at times and things like that, and rainbow armbands to support LGBTQ plus sort of people.
Money talks. We know FIFA and UEFA. They're all corrupt.
It's ridiculous.
We'll do a separate video on
all
that.
About
let's focus on this. Because I think we'll definitely do the videos on that, and we will cover that.
One other thing that I heard yesterday is Ukraine has a mud season.
Oh yeah.
And basically the winter thaw, which is happening now, is their mud season.
I thought you meant like Tiger Feet, the band.
No,
that's right.
Dreadful, absolutely dreadful. But basically, because it's the winter thaw, all of the fields are just thick mud. And
is it the winter thaw now? Because it looks like it's still snowing.
No, I think it's starting. I think we're getting into that.
Right.
And essentially, if you deviate from the roads and you go into the fields now, even in a tank, you're fucked. And it seems like, when Germany tried to invade Russia during the winter and everyone just froze to death and there was no supplies, and it seems like Russia might be making a similar mistake from what I heard.
I heard one of the diplomats the other day, and he says something about if NATO get involved, and this is proper threats back and forth, the way you go, and if NATO gets involved, we are a nuclear superpower.
Yeah.
Or we're a nuclear power.
Yeah, they've said a couple of things like that.
And he just went, and he's a diplomat.
Yeah.
Like,
not very diplomatic
no,
of him.
Dickhead. Yeah. But someone needs to take Putin out. That's what I say.
Yeah. There's currently going to be missiles aimed in so many directions. It's scary.
But everyone's treading lightly because of economic backdrops to all countries. Because Russia's got money.
But I don't know. Like, why has no one appealed to the Russian people to say, this doesn't represent you.
Right,
I've
seen that. I've seen that.
This is your oppressors doing this to you.
Yeah.
Rise up, do something.
Yeah, but it's rising up against the mass. It's the minority against the majority. It's very difficult to sort of like.
I know. It sounds nice and it sounds, Have you seen the things in Russia in?
If we could rise up against Boris, most of us would. Trust me, and the Tory government. I know we would.
What's the square? Is it in Moscow?
Red Square.
Is it Red Square? Have you seen? There's people holding up pieces of paper with nothing written on it, and they're just stood there with a blank piece of paper, and they're coming in and getting arrested and strong-armed out of there. Because
that's what I'm saying. It's the minority to try to rise up.
It's a protest, and they're saying there's nothing. Not saying anything.
Well, what you've got as well is when I think Ukraine are one of the world's largest wheat producers.
I heard that as well, actually.
So and then last time the wheat went up to the value it's at now, it was the Arab Spring.
Really?
Did it start in Tunisia or? It was all around that area, wasn't it? North Africa, Libya, sort of thing. Right. That Arab Spring that come on Morocco, or wherever it was. It was one of the North African parts. I think it was Tunisia. Wow. Might be wrong, but it's that's where it all started, and they reckon that could start again with the Arab Spring, another Arab Spring, because of all this wheat that's valued at that. So there's a lot going on. It's like I say, it's a big economic sort of like dropout.
Yeah, of course,
it's a game of chess with like 400 pieces either side.
Big time.
The value of destroying fuel trucks. Of course, if you stop the fuel trucks, you stop the tanks, and unlike tanks, fuel trucks are typically unarmored and can be destroyed with cheap, accessible bullets or Molotov cocktails. When the Russians started disguising their fuel trucks to look more like traditional transport trucks, posts and messages quickly followed, making the updated target profile clear. Ukrainian forces also destroyed 2 key bridges into Kyiv, allowing them to focus on defending a smaller number of choke points, and similar tactics were used elsewhere in the country. The Ukrainian military also destroyed all connections between the Russian and Ukrainian rail networks to prevent the invading force from taking hold of them to ramp up their supply lines. Elsewhere, across the country, towns and cities dismantled their street signs, or in some cases, painted over them to read "Welcome to Hell," making it harder for Russian troops, many of which relied solely on paper maps, to navigate around the country. Meanwhile, with the Russian military relying nearly entirely on analog, unsecured radio communications, amateur radio enthusiasts and hacktivist organizations like Anonymous work to block and surveil enemy radio frequencies.
Anonymous has done a great job as well.
Yeah.
They've really crippled a lot of their infrastructure.
Really?
Yeah. And outed a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
Big time.
And
releasing private documents, everything.
Yeah.
There's a lot of that going on behind the scenes. Yeah. I was listening to someone that's
fucking good. I don't know where they based it. I know the global sort
of
thing.
It's
the world's best hackers, isn't it?
Sort of thing. But it's not. There's no
base. Yeah.
No, there's no superiors or anything. It's just a collective, isn't it? And then there's like offshoots and it's just people that kind of work for a common cause.
Yeah, follow them on like social media sort of thing and see what they're up to, and they don't fucking tell you some of the shit they pull. He's like, it's impressive.
Yeah.
Even went further to broadcast pig sounds, thematic music, or written messages that would appear when analyzed on a spectrogram. Russia countered this with strategic disinformation, purportedly spreading this post listing fake frequencies across social media, but the Ukrainian side quickly caught on and spread the corrected frequencies across their means of communication. Now, to experts, the Russian military's logistics difficulties were hardly surprising. In fact, they represented a historical through line. When analyzing the disastrous Soviet-Afghan War of the 1980s, poor logistics performance is an oft-cited reason for the USSR's failure to achieve its objectives. According to tacticians, their logistics support forces were inflexible and under-equipped, which left the fighting forces too under-equipped to perform their jobs. Of course, thanks to their vast railway network, which nearly entirely falls under state control, Russia's military has that incredible domestic mobilization capability. In fact, some 30,000 of their personnel serve in the Russian railway troops, whose task involves the defense, use, and construction of railways for military purposes. This force, larger than that of most countries, is indicative of just how crucial this one infrastructure asset is to their military machine. However, this domestic advantage, this reliance on the rails, simultaneously represents an Achilles heel when conflicts take place beyond their borders. When war stretches past their furthest rail yards, Russian military logistics capabilities are, at best, mediocre. In the case of this invasion, the primary advanced rail yards being used are in Belarus and Russia itself, so for any further supply lines, especially any stretching into Ukraine, Russia had to resort to trucks. And simply put, Russia doesn't have enough trucks. Each of Russia's combined arms armies, the largest organizational unit of their ground forces, is typically supported by one material technical support brigade. Essentially, their logistics support forces. Each of these brigades is composed of around 1,000 personnel operating 408 transport vehicles capable of hauling 1,870 tons of cargo. This, it turns out, is rather inadequate. According to retired US Lieutenant Colonel Alex Vershinin, a conflict modeling and simulations expert, Russia's forces, under their current configuration, are simply incapable of properly supporting a fight more than 90 miles or 145 kilometers from supply dumps, in this case, rail yards. And these assumptions were based on a 45-mile or 70 km per hour average transport speed, which is likely only attained when territory is firmly within Russian control, something that proved elusive in the opening days of this invasion. A highly active conflict reliant on rocket artillery fire, which accurately describes this war, is even more resource-intensive on the logistics support forces, as each individual rocket requires a dedicated truck for transport to the launcher. With the frequency of artillery fire in the early days of the invasion, a large chunk of Russia's Material Technical Support Brigade's capability was certainly tied up in supplying ammunition to launch sites. This general incapability seemingly reflects in Russia's strategy in Ukraine. Currently, the predominant characterization is that Russia believed that through a combination of dramatic airborne and land-based attacks in the opening hours and days of the invasion, the Ukrainians would quickly capitulate. They'd either surrender, or Russian forces would quickly reach Kyiv, topple the government, and install a puppet government, a belief that was supported by nearly all independent analysts prior to the conflict's start. Analysis suggests that when invading, Russia's forces can operate largely self-sufficiently without logistics support for about 3 to 5 days. So, when the conflict did not conclude within that time frame, the Russians found themselves scrambling to regroup and resupply. Now, most Western forces, which are generally much better equipped from a logistics standpoint, operate on a pull-based system where fighting forces request resupplies as needed based on what actually occurs. Meanwhile, the Russian military operates predominantly on a push-based system where forces are resupplied on a more predictable basis as determined by leadership. This means that, in practice, there is more strategic decision-making and prioritization of which forces most need or warrant resupply, and which materials are most important to resupply. So, in Ukraine, it's likely that ammunition was prioritized ahead of, say, fuel for tanks on less strategically important fronts. In the context of perpetual logistics limitations, as is the case for Russia's military, this is likely the more effective approach, but in the grand scheme of things, it's certainly less effective than the Western pull approach, which focuses on flexible logistics that adapt to real-world conditions. In short, Western forces let strategy lead logistics, while Russian forces let logistics lead strategy. The single factor that can best address these issues, however, is time. The Russian military does have the capabilities to set a war zone up for a more prolonged conflict. Its material technical support brigades include tactical pipeline battalions, for example, that can quickly construct networks in Ukraine to bring fuel and water closer to the active fronts without the need for burdensome supply convoys. Russia's railway troops can do the same with rail infrastructure, mending or constructing networks to support a long-term conflict or occupation. And the country can take a page out of the Soviet playbook, leveraging the full might of the public and private sectors to support the military's operations. What the opening days of Russia's invasion of Ukraine have done, however, is exposed a weak point in the nation's military might, or perhaps demonstrated that the weak points of the Soviet military are still present.
Such an iconic clip. Is it brilliant?
I've not seen that one.
You've not seen it? The Ukrainian farmers stealing a tank. Yeah.
I've not seen that. That's brilliant.
Yeah.
It's just,
oh wow.
I mean, it's a shame. It's really a tragedy, isn't it? But there's so many laughable clips like that have come out of this where you're just like, fuck yeah, it's a proper like stick it to the man.
It gives me a buzz seeing things like that. But also, again, going back to what we were saying earlier, it just shows how amateur Russia is when it comes to military might. They've got all the strength and they've got all the gear, no idea, really. Don't know it's the way to put it.
They touched on it before on the radio thing as well, didn't they? Say it's all analog still. You think this day and age it'd all be like digital, wouldn't you?
They could WhatsApp each other and it's encrypted.
You even see like, when they were stood all in lines like looking down, you wouldn't have that in any other military. You wouldn't. You'd be in your face, eyes straight, and they're fucking yelling in your face.
Look the part.
Yeah. But look the part, act the part, and be ready. And they're just not. For me, they just come across as amateur.
Yeah,
they're like mercenaries that have just been assembled together.
I think it probably is pretty much, isn't it? Like I say, with all the conscripts and.
I think he kind of touched on it though. It's too much oversight from the top, so there's not a lot of autonomy at the lower levels. So you can't see a lower level, like lower ranking officer, making tactical decisions. It's probably someone in the Kremlin, pushing about things, like they used to do in the Second World War.
Not actually being on the ground making a decision, sort of thing.
When they brought the transcripts out there about what someone had said, and I don't know what his site, I can't remember what his site was now, but he was a specialist in like logistics and planning and something else, and they have people. Russia don't seem to have them people. Or if they do, they're not very good at it.
I think the problem is when you've got such a what would you call it? Like there's just so much fear. It's all fear based.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, they're all crazy meatheads, but they don't know how to do it.
But if you've got some high up general who's like an expert in logistics and he's there going, listen, Putin, this is what we need to do. We can't do that. It'll be a massacre. It'll probably disappear.
Yeah, you just wonder how much notice would he take, and if he seems to me like he's got
like the old Dr. Evil sort of thing, where he shoots him in the head, and then just says, "I'll do it my way."
Yeah.
You feel like he's got his like idea of what he wants to happen, and that will happen like that. And these gentlemen come and say, "Yeah, well, we can't."
You seen his face when he did that, when he did the TV announcements to say we've got an operation sort of thing. He was bitter and angry. He was like mad.
But all dictatorships, it's I can't think of the word I'm trying to say, but it's a climate of sort of fear. It's exactly that. And if your top people around you can't give you legitimate advice openly about logistics, about all tactics, you're screwed. You're completely screwed.
These should be teams and teams and teams of people that are doing the logistics side of it all. It should be hundreds of people, sort of like all doing it, all led by different departments for different things, all coming together. I'm not sure Russia has that because, like I say, they're too bit. Anytime NATO get involved now, I mean, obviously it'd be a world war, there'd be nuclear stuff, but Russia could be wiped out within 3 days.
It's the damage they could inflict in those 3 days that would be next level.
And the World Economic Forum will just be dead.
Yeah,
because we'd be in,
it'd be a disaster for everyone involved.
It would be,
yeah, I'd hate to live in a major city and like even in the UK or the US or somewhere.
Anywhere, but Russia would be wiped out within 3 days by the superpowers of NATO.
Yeah,
they need to close the airspace in Ukraine because otherwise that's next.
But then that is an act of war, isn't it? Yeah. Because essentially, if they fly a plane into that airspace that we've closed, that's an act of war against us.
It's not closed yet.
No, but that's why that's a huge escalation shutting the airspace. Yeah, because that is essentially not declaring war on Russia, but it's making them declare war on us as soon as they fly a helicopter or a plane in that airspace.
It needs to be closed on.
I agree. I think we should come down a lot harder on him. Yeah. But it's like I say, it's a game of chess with so many moving parts.
We're twisting the knife slowly.
Yeah,
we're tightening the screws very slowly, and it's getting to him now.
I tell you what, a couple of 100,000 homes in the UK have signed up to house Ukrainian refugees. My mum's done it.
Yeah, I've got Sasha and Misha coming to stay with us. One's 23, one's 28.
Look just like their grandma.
Logistics capabilities are arguably one major strategic advantage of many Western militaries, especially the US's, whose global network of military bases and massive sea and airlift capabilities allow it to properly supply conflict truly anywhere on Earth. For Russia to have failed so visibly mere miles from its border exposes its Achilles heel to any future adversary. Tragically, however, these early struggles appear to make the Russian military only more desperate. As the conflict prolonged, the invaders resorted to looting, to shelling civilian areas, to increasingly destructive weaponry, and to more deadly techniques to compensate for their lack of strategic tact.
That's that vacuum bomb, isn't it? That they've dropped.
That's what I'm saying, dirty tactics now. They start like, they're up against it, and it's like he's facing embarrassment, he's backed into a corner, he's getting beat. He's not getting beat, but he's losing the long-term sort of like strategy of what he wants to do. Yeah. It's gone on far too long. Everyone's being sanctioned, country, oligarchs, people of power in the country. So, and everyone's joining in. The world's got behind Ukraine.
Absolutely.
And rightly so. Guy's an arsehole.
Yeah. And
you
Putin
Vladimir
is lost his yacht that's worth something like 900 million was taken.
He hasn't. Can't prove it's his.
I can't prove it's his. I thought it was taken. No. But either way, that's communism for you, isn't it? You've got a yacht worth 900 million.
Yeah. There's a couple where they can't take it, but Abramovich has parked both of his
off Turkey.
In Turkey. They're both in Turkey. But the way he sailed, and he got one out of, I think it was in dry dock in Barcelona, and he pulled it out rather quickly while he was undergoing repairs, and then put it into international waters and sort of like sailed round, glided round Greece and Cyprus and all this kind of stuff.
You've only got to get 12 miles off the coast, haven't we?
But why Turkey not involved in... Don't they want to join the EU?
I think it's been sort of like peace brokers, aren't they? I think
Turkey will never join the EU.
No, I know that.
No, I think they want to, don't they?
Want to.
I'm not sure.
This ain't going to help them, then, is it?
No.
No.
Therefore, the true cost for Russia's failure is borne on the innocent casualties of war. Ukrainian defenders, Russian conscripts, and perhaps most tragically, the Ukrainian civilians who were displaced injured or killed simply for staying in the place they called home. As many of you know, covering topics relating to war and conflict can be difficult on YouTube. Unfortunately, that's just the nature of an ad-supported platform. Content needs to be considered safe by advertisers. We've had to carefully write and edit this video to hopefully
They've got another platform, haven't they, where you can see.
I want to listen to what he's got to say that day.
stay within YouTube's content guidelines. However, there is value in the topics that advertisers don't consider safe. That's the ethos behind Nebula. It's a streaming site founded and owned by creators, including myself, so it was made to be the best home for what we make. That means we can operate without constraints. We're not beholden to advertisers or an algorithm. That's how Joseph from Real Life Lore was able to make his exclusive Modern Conflict series, which presents amazingly detailed accounts of the conflicts in Ukraine leading up to this most recent, the Soviet War in Afghanistan.
Channel, Real Life Law.
Yeah, we've done quite a bit.
Yeah,
haven't we?
this Wendover Productions. Well, what a great video that was.
Yeah, we're gonna
really
have to.
enjoyed that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, really,
Very
really
well
good.
put together.
I think
Great voiceover,
Yeah.
narration, absolutely.
We've done a few Wendover, haven't we?
Yeah, I'm gonna have a look at that Nebula at some
Yeah.
point because it is right. You know, there was people, you get demonetized for using a word. There's a couple of words that
Yeah.
I've said during this video that a year ago your video's just done.
Yeah.
If you say it, like the video we did yesterday where the guy was calling it the beer disease.
Yeah.
Oh, right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
That was
beer
for that
disease.
exact reason.
Yeah.
But yeah, what an interesting
Yeah.
video.
Yeah, really good.
Absolutely, very
Yeah.
well put together, informative, well mapped out. Great narration.
Yeah.
Everything about it was spot on. That really enjoyed that.
I love that collection of clips as well because sadly most of the clips I've seen are on TikTok and some of them are fake, some are unverified.
Yeah, you can't verify. You
But
can't
there's-
verify them. Yeah.
There's certain ones that have done the rounds and they've been verified as well. And it's imagine getting your news from TikTok, your frontline
That's
news of a
bizarre, isn't it?
conflict.
That's the way of life now. It's it's fast. It's fast news. You get it instant.
Yeah.
It's live. Sometimes it's live. You can't. Your Skies of the world and your Foxes of the world and Associated Press. They're not always on scene, but someone's always on scene. They've got TikTok.
It's pretty ironic.
Straight
isn't
into the
it, that
platform.
TikTok's so big in this, and that's Chinese owned.
Yeah.
And they're like big, sort of like allies, aren't they, of Russia? It's sort of like a bit.
It's a very
it's a bit
bizarre
strange,
thing,
isn't it?
'cause I've heard that TikTok. I don't know how true it is. I can't. I've never looked into it, but I've heard that TikTok can only be used between certain times by kids in China. It just shuts off.
Yeah.
And also they show kids engineering videos and learning sort of videos, whereas TikTok in the West is stupid dances,
yeah.
Adverts for people's OnlyFans pages,
Cleavage.
Yeah, cleavage, which I love. I'm down for that.
Can't wait to see a bit of engineering tonight.
But I think that that's one of the theories. Is that's a move? They're trying to boost their own young generations to be engineers, mathematicians,
Sort of
forward
educate at the
thinkers.
same
Wasn't that
And
OnlyFans started though?
They're trying to dumb down the West by just here's a pair of tits.
OnlyFans started the same way. Wasn't it like paintings in like the Louvre or wherever? And
I'm not sure.
Art galleries around the world that people could see the paintings by joining OnlyFans and seeing it. Then all of a sudden, women got involved. Some women got involved in it and
Really?
started doing the porn channels and stuff.
Do you remember when they were going to ban porn from OnlyFans? It was mid last year, I think it was, and they said they tried to float it on the stock market, and all the investors said they'd pull out.
Yeah.
Or pull it out, depending on. But they were gonna bin it off, and they had to backtrack quick because everyone just started setting up Schmonly fans, like other websites, and all the creators were just moving over to somewhere else.
That's what happens, isn't it? So, but it's sad what's going on in the Ukraine, and I feel really bad for the Ukrainian people, especially the ones that have had to evacuate the country. Relocate to places. 2.5 million people, I think it is at the moment, maybe 3 million.
Huge
now.
amount, isn't it? It's absolutely
It's a
mind
massive
blowing.
amount.
Really is.
We were slow on the uptake in the UK to sort of like dish out visas for people to come over. I know there's a process they had to go through, but it was slow on the uptake. And I don't know if any Ukrainians are in the UK and they want to come and visit us and come out for lunch and all that kind of stuff. If you're a refugee and all that kind of stuff, we'll look after you.
Yeah, specifically
Office
Tatiana from Ginger. She's in California. Apparently.
Office blokes are here for you.
I'll tell you what. Poland have really, really stepped up here as well, haven't they?
Moldova is one of the poorest countries in Europe.
Yeah.
And they're really sort of like overwhelmed by, I think the population was something like 400,000.
Wow.
And I think they had something like 200,000 refugees coming to the country.
Yeah.
Wow.
So,
That's
unbelievable.
Well, let's hope that all the European countries are supporting
we've got
them.
to support it financially and logistically as well, with medical supplies and beds, equipment, people need food.
Absolutely right, yeah.
I left the cinema near me on Friday night, and there's quite a lot of empty units in the middle of Northwich, and there was these brand new built sort of, but no one's ever taken them on. And there was this one that must have been, it was warehouse size. It was absolutely humongous, and it's made for department stores. And walking for ages, and it was just these big metal cages just full of stuff. And I assumed it was stock for the shops or whatever.
It's Ukrainian relief.
It's Ukrainian relief, and like. There was tons and tons and tons.
I know a few people that drove over there like with relief aid, in the vans. And
yeah,
there's been quite a few convoys
so
going over.
much there, and it's one of them where you look at it and it's like, fuck yeah, people are good.
Yeah,
definitely. Everyone's trying to help.
Most people
are.
help. It's something that's happened. It's not their fault. Don't know if they caused it and it was like incitement and all that kind of stuff. Everyone would be like, "Why are you being dickheads?"
Yeah.
But they haven't. It's innocent parties just being sort of like it's barbarism and it's
Yeah.
It's not on. No, basically, no, it's not on.
But yeah. Anyway, enjoyed that.
Yeah, it's
hope
good
you guys enjoyed that too. Don't forget like and subscribe, hit the bell, and we'll catch you on the next one.
Cheers. Guys.